Good evening, everyone. What a lovely pleasure and a privilege to be able to present this evening on creation of equestrian culture. First up, a huge thank you to the students. Without the students, there wouldn't be an Equine Industry Symposium, and under the excellent leadership of Dr. Katrina Merkes. I was in person at the 6 years ago at the Equine Industry Symposium, and I had such a warm welcome. So thank you once again for inviting me. I managed to pick up along the on that visit my memory of such lovely warm welcome from everybody at the University of Guelph. I have written a book all about equestrian culture, and it's called Welfare Horse Sports, a Blueprint for Positive Change. It is published by Routledge Publishers, and you can find that book next month, released on the 12th of December. So, just to sort of shape or to explain and share where my positionality is, and it is for the horse, and being able to shape positive change by intersecting culture, equine science, and my ethicality. And at the heartland of my positionality is being equicentric or horse centered. And I am actually identifying as a pracademic. So this is a bit like recognizing I work in practice. I am the behavior consultant for Mount St. John and various other organizations. I'm the project lead for the Association of British Riding Schools, equestrian centres and livery yards. And it's this intersectionality that sort of helps me support for organizations, their mindset, their skill set, and then system sets, which I will come on to later. I also want to share the origin of the title of my book, Welfare Horse Sports. It was post Paris 2024 Olympic Games, and I was being interviewed by a journalist from the Telegraph asking me what would I like to change about horse sports. And I said, instead of actually doing horse sports with welfare, we should be doing a whole system shift to demonstrating welfare horse sports. And that involves mindset change, skill set change, and system set change. Now, where we're at to and why we have tonight's theme is this whole leaky bucket in today's immense societal change. And that is a quote from Pippa Cookson, a journalist from Horse and Hound. And patching holes in our bucket tonight is this metaphor for systems and not just individuals that are actually leaking trust, meaning, and horses faring well or welfare. Culture is how we do things when no one is watching. It's these patterns of learned behaviors that we get reinforced for by social rewards, such as our social identities, our status, and authority. And this image was taken only last month by a dog walker. And why she took a photograph is because she was the horse was distressed. She was able to identify that, and so took a picture. Now, this horse has their chin strapped to their chest and has a dummy on them. So this horse is actually loose in the arena and was distressed, hence why the dog walker took this photograph, and is another example of how we need to be looking at our systems as well as our mindsets and our skill sets in order to patch the holes in our leaky bucket. So thinking about culture over the past 150 years, we've actually evolved from being an agricultural age where our normalized behavior was physical strength as we actually farmed the land. Then we moved into an industrial age where culture was really all about our physical strength as a mass production worker, as well as our personal fortitude or mental fortitude. We've moved recently into an information age where actually knowledge is our work and information is and knowledge is combined for affluence or for us to accumulate affluence through technological progress and globalization, which has led to collective momentum in today's age. And I will talk more about this shortly. And that is our conceptual age, where we're actually having this symphony of thinking or symphony thinking. And that is our ability to put pieces together in a way that is meaning making. And what we mean by pieces is multiple disciplines or multidisciplinary fields. And so we actually synthesize rather than analyze to see what relationships are going going on between seemingly unrelated fields in order to actually develop and to detect broad patterns, in order to actually combine something new that may help us solve our current problems, like leaking trust. What we've had happen since 2020, so this was published in the pandemic, is textbooks that really are, this particular book is by Charlie Mackesy, who wrote about The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, and it's sold 10 million copies, and it's one of the longest running Sunday Times bestseller ever. And that's because it speaks to our ability to build mental fitness. We've had recent studies look at 98,000 people being able to actually be surveyed about watching short videos on TikTok, so a social platform, from adults and teens, and what they actually have been struggling with on this is from 71 studies, is they've struggled with attention, self-control, stress and anxiety. World Health Organization have also identified that 1 in 7 10-year-old to 19-year-olds experience a mental disorder, such as depression, anxiety and behavioral disorders. And this is really sort of creating this whole illness and disability amongst adolescents. Where do they then go to find their support? And one of the actual answers to that has been the recent report published by British Equestrian on horses' social value, the impact socially of horses in society. And what it recognises that our horses are actually serving us and our ability to build our mental fitness. And this is a understanding from the British Horse Society have created this campaign, which is recognising that horses are actually serving us in society by enhancing our mental fitness through their interaction with us. And we can see that for the joy, for the passion, for the feeling, for the freedom. And this question, what does the feeling mean to you, is a really, and you can see more about this on Facebook from the British Horse Society, about horses in service to us. But what I'd like to do this evening is to actually invite us to look at shaping culture, where actually we look at also not just for the feeling, but for the horse. And to do that, we can look back at a knowledge that now we know better, we could now do better. This requires unlearning. And this is an image from Charlie's book. I wonder if there's a school of unlearning. Now, unlearning isn't easy. It is going to be uncomfortable and feels like discomfort, because we are looking back, and instead of actually looking back at our heritage equestrian practices with judgment, we want to be able to look back and reflect critically on what's going on for the horse, applying our new knowledge of the intersection of learning theory, animal welfare science, and ethics and ethicality helps us to build and create a culture of equicentric, i.e. looking at all our interactions with the horse's mental and physical well-being at the centre. And that is what we mean by creating an equestrian culture for the horse. This is an illustration from my upcoming book, Whole Systems Thinking, the heartland of a welfare horse sport mindset. And what we're really looking at is all these different fields, veterinary science, animal welfare science, cognitive neuroscience, all feeding into being able to leave horses better. And I will talk about the evidence of that through neuroscience shortly. But all of these fields are intersecting systems thinking science in order to enhance horse welfare. And I talk about that in my book. I want to now mention something called the mere exposure principle. And a good example of this principle is the history smash hit song Despacito. So in 2017, throughout the summer, it had a huge amount of radio play, as well as streaming or being downloaded, and it also won Song of the Year in 2017, as well as the best music video. And it actually is an example of mere exposure. This also happened with our 3 Fs. Most of you tonight will have heard of the 3 Fs, and the origin is our good friend and Canadian Lauren Fraser. And what she did in 2012 in September is she wrote this blog post, and that is where she really spout out the species specific knowledge that horses require friends first, then forage, then freedom. And we all know that that's because horses are social species. So last year, Dr. Andrew McLean and I, a good friend of my mentor and coach, we actually went on a podcast. We created our own podcast called The Other End of the Reins. And in episode 5, I interview Andrew, and he talks about the missing F. And what he means by that is the word fortitude, which also is about understanding that horses experience mental security. And so, how do we provide our horses or serve our horses with mental security? How do we give them mental fortitude? And so, horses are in the society serving us. But can we serve our horses instead of horses only serving us? And when we look at frameworks that are evidence-based, this one has also gone mere exposure. So this is a bit like Friends, Forage and Freedom. It's the 5 domains. It is the accumulation of domains 1 to 4 that result in the robust inference of the mental state, or the 5th domain, which is the mental state. 3 central tenets. Can we actually help horses identify negative experiences? Can we help them resolve those negative experiences? And can we provide opportunities for positive experiences? I am focused on my work in the application of these frameworks. So not just the 5 domains framework, but I also, like a perfume, I layer these frameworks so that actually, like a perfume, the base note is the 4 Fs. And you'll see here on this illustration from my upcoming book that the fortitude F is actually sits intentionally under mental state, and that's because we're looking at mental security. And we go around as a so the base note of this perfume of actually being equicentric is the 4 Fs. The next mid note of this being equicentric is the 5 domains. And what I'm really going into riding schools, equestrian centres, is applying the first principles of horse training from the International Society for Equitation Science. This is what I mean by skill sets. And that is like the top note of a perfume. Moving then into what the missing F is, fortitude, telos, which is the work of Rollin in 2006. It's the horseness of a horse and being able to actually show up serving horses with the knowledge and understanding of a horse's telos. And in there is also the knowledge of how we can help horses experience their world with predictability and controllability by using the correct use of signals, so light aids as predictable for predictability, the release of pressure for controllability, and the ability for us to give them the off, i.e. keep going until we signal otherwise. So the absence of relentless pressure. This all feeds into the regard for their emotional state, principle number 4. And that really matters when we think about future-proofing the use of horses in sport, but also future-proofing how we use horses in leisure and riding schools and equestrian centres. So the next slide is really about mindsets. And this is a BHS coach. She has been a coach for 10 years. She's called Clara. I met her when I was at Team Tutsham, and I was upskilling the team with their skill set. And what she did for me afterwards was she wanted to video this, and Joe was behind the video. I didn't know anything about this, and you'll hear something around how she has been able to reflect on the skill set in order to help her in her own job as a coach enhance horse welfare. And what we've got is scientists doing research on how do we take up new knowledge? What is it about some people are able to take up new knowledge in the face of stronger evidence? And other people have a high propensity to resist taking up that new knowledge. And it does actually is dependent on our ability to actually do intellectual humility. And that is dependent on our ability to actually be able to practice reflective thinking. And one form of practice of reflection is actually reflexive praxis. So we're going to just listen for a couple of minutes to Clara demonstrating what we call a micro story of change and doing reflexive praxis.
Hi Lisa, I just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback and update. So after I had some training with you on Monday when you came to visit us, and we worked together with Winter and retraining out the way we asked our horses questions. Um, I had a really successful lesson the following day. Now this is with a horse that I've taught the rider multiple times, and I admit sometimes it's felt a bit like I'm banging my head against the wall, because aside from saying, come on, make him go, kick harder, or tap him with the whip harder, I've been stuck with how to get the pair of them gelled and the pony moving forward freely in a positive way. So, using what you taught me on Winter, the following day I had this pony, horse, and rider combination, and we started completely from the beginning again, exactly how you showed me, with using our calves to ask the question and then backing it up with the frequency of taps with a long whip, not intensity, and and it was brilliant. By the end of the session, so she'd normally ride in with a long schooling whip and spurs, and by the end of the lesson, we've taken away the schooling whip, we've taken away the spurs, and she was, from the outside, almost thinking trot, and he was trotting, thinking canter, he was cantering, and it was brilliant. It was so rewarding for me to see how happy the rider was, that she wasn't having to pony club click, she wasn't exhausted, she didn't feel frustrated, and it was really that brilliant. I was so thrilled about it. So thank you endless amounts for sharing your knowledge with us.
So we're just moving into the actual project and what we've been actually working on. The blue is all about skill sets, the red is all about mindsets, and we're also doing the development of system sets and being able to actually, as a whole system, move into equicentric, observable behaviours. So what does this actually mean? Well, when we want to leave horses better, and what I mean by that is we show up with giving horses predictability, controllability, self-carriage, and that is through light cues, clean releases, or better than expected outcomes for our riding school horses and self-carriage. And so what we've got is the knowledge of from neuroscience, the field of neuroscience, that actually when we take that concept into horses and horse training, that when we have a better than expected outcome, so this is the difference between the what we're expecting and what actually happens. If it's better than expected, we do actually get a release of dopamine. So we're getting this biological pathway that we are leaving horses better, or leaving this feel good, better neurotransmitter of dopamine because of our interaction. If it is a not as expected or worse than expected, with poor timing, inconsistent reinforcement, we can then actually bring across the concept that what happens in a negative prediction error is stress and frustration and the release of cortisol. So we've got this sort of the knowledge of neuroscience feeding into how we then actually can evidence that we are leaving our horses better because of providing positive prediction errors. And then taking this into obviously our community of practice of riding schools, the Associated British Riding Schools, equestrian centres and livery yards, we are building actually public trust, or being able to actually sort of stop the leaking of the absence of trust and actually demonstrate that we are trustworthy to be able to using horses in leisure and in sport, because we do light aids, clean releases, and actually focus on self-carriage for the horse, for their mental security, or the fourth F. Here are some examples from Team Tutsham of their application of the 5 domains. So we've got here domain 1, nutrition, all sorts of variations of food, sticky weed, forage nets. We've got physical environment, and of domain 2. They've been installing scratch posts throughout their equestrian centre, and then we go into health for their very chronic laminitic pony. They've created a new space. This is a work in progress, but the horse will have sand, or the pony will have sand and different like felts to experience, as well as getting to interact with the horses in the field. And then they've moved from tying their horses up ready for lessons, and on lesson days, so at the weekends, into these bays where they get to actually choose proximity close to their friends or further away, depending on what they need at that time. This is a short video from another of the equestrian centres, Stepney Bank, and they've put up a scratching post since doing the 5 domains, the University of New England online course. And that 5 domains, or applying the 5 domains, is prompting so many different opportunities for the teams at the riding centres to think about positive experiences for their horses. The fourth domain, behavioural interactions. Here you can see Team Tutsham have added in social windows. They've thought about their best friends, their BFFs, and they're thinking about moving that around. This is Marley, a pony that actually finds having her sunscreen on her muzzle actually aversive. Here I was working with one of the members of the team on counter conditioning Marley, whilst over here is a text exchange between Clara and her client, and you can really see for the horse that when she talks about squeezing and tapping, the method has helped Otis improve the basics that they were struggling with, and he was actually, and she writes, he was already a stubborn horse, so we understand that wasn't actually what was taking place. There was an absence of a learnt response, but it does actually manifest for the rider as stubborn, and getting him going was a pain for me and him, but now he understands what to do. And there's that clarity of communication by using learning theory. And then for the feeling, we've got here that she comes back and said, it has not only improved me physically, but helped me with riding mentally by making me feel more confident, and Otis being able to feel that. But also it has been so nice to not be kicking him, and I'm able to actually enjoy my rides. So these are just sort of some examples of what we're doing in this equicentric futures project with the Association of British Riding Schools. Come and join us online in my online community of Coffee with Horse Lovers, where we discuss this further, and all these other online places in order to do positive change for horses. And just finally, how do we patch our leaky bucket? Well, my application is through cultural change for the horse and for the feeling for us, and we do that by renovating equestrian culture. We keep what works and we change or update what doesn't, and that is how we and we do that all in community, and that's how we build trust.